Hey, welcome back to the JCR Garage. My name is Daryl. Today I'm going to show you how to install our tie-in kit for our JLU roof rack. This tie-in kit ties the mid and the rear mount to the cage of your Jeep and to the tub of your Jeep, allowing you to carry more weight up here like a rooftop tent and those kind of things. Pretty easy to install. We got to do some drilling though, so let's get started. All right, so the first step is, if you don't already have your rack totally assembled, go ahead and do that. There is an install video for the assembly on this, on the Gladiator, but it's exactly the same as this right here. The one difference is, to do this install, we're gonna need to remove this extrusion rail right above the mid mount. So you're gonna grab a 5/32 T-handle here and remove the 2 bolts per side, and we're just gonna pop this rail out of the way. If you're watching this video before you assemble the rack, go ahead and just leave this out. You can install it later, but for now, we're going to have to pull this out of here since this rack is already on our roof. Now we want to make sure that the rack is installed on the right place on the hardtop. What you're looking for is the back of this side rail here, this back edge, to kind of be in the middle of this line on the hardtop. Back of this edge on the middle, there's some wiggle room in our brackets, but if you're here, you'll be just fine. Hey, Daryl from the future. We're going to stick this clip in so you kind of have an idea of exactly where you should be drilling before you're drilling, so you don't drill in the wrong spot. So I'm going to take a tape measure and I'm going to start it. There's a seam on the back of this hardtop here. I'm going to start my tape measure on the front edge of that seam and pull forward. So the first bolt is going to be at 9.5. The next bolt in front of that is going to be right at about 10.75. Up here, we are going to have a bolt at 39.25, and the next bolt will be at 40.5. So that's 40.5, 39.25, 10.75, 9.5 is right about where you should be. Like I said, there's adjustability in this, but if you're there, you should be set. All right, so next we're going to take our 5/32 T-handle, and we are going to remove these nuts here on the inside on the mid-mount. So the 2 nuts here, we're going to pull off. You can leave the button heads on the rack itself, and then grab this bracket here, 90-degree bracket, slots in one side, holes in the other. Take the slots and put them over your button heads on that mount with the holes facing down. And then we're going to use those holes to mark our drill locations. So we're going to hold this bracket tightly against the roof rack here and take our Sharpie, and we are going to mark those holes in the top of the roof, and then we can pull this bracket off and we can drill those holes. Now that we marked the holes, we're going to have to drill them. There's 2 layers of the hardtop. There's a top layer, a space, and then a bottom layer. So you're going to want to drill a pilot hole first. I just grabbed, this is like a 3/16, 1/4 inch, whatever, drill bit. You're going to want to drill your pilot hole all the way through, and then for the larger hole, you're going to need a 3/4 inch drill bit. These are available at like your local home centers, but they're kind of expensive there. It might be 20 bucks for this bit. So if you can get it online before, you're not going to need a really high quality one just because it's going through fiberglass, not steel. So 3/4 inch drill bit, because we are going to install a 3/4 inch steel spacer. So the first thing, like I said, we're going to do is chuck the smaller bit up and then drill all the way through the roof. You want to be perpendicular to the rack when you do this. So make sure that you're kind of staying perpendicular. We did give you some wiggle room, like I said before, with the brackets, but as long as you're drilling on your holes that you're marked and you're staying perpendicular to the rack itself, straight through the roof, you won't have any problems. Now on these rear holes, you shouldn't have anything to worry about as far as anything obstructing your drill bit on the bottom, or the inside rather. On the mid holes, the cage is kind of close to the bottom hole, so just be sure you're not going down too far with that drill bit and scratching your cage. You can put some tape on there to kind of stop that, but if you pay attention, you should be all set. So go ahead and drill the other hole in the back, and then mark and drill your mid holes, and then I'll see you inside. We'll start mounting our brackets. All right, now we're going to move this rearmost hardtop bolt and the mid hardtop bolt on each side. We're going to do that with a T50. So go ahead and pull those bolts all the way out. Then we're going to take this rear bracket here and we're going to slide it in. And then we will loosely reinstall that rear bolt and that middle bolt. You don't want to tighten them all the way down, but you do want to snug them up enough so this thing isn't flopping all around. So go ahead and just snug that enough so you have some adjustability here, and then repeat on the other side. Now we're going to give you two of these brackets. They're mirrored for each side. On the passenger side, yours is going to look like this. Rotate it like that, and then it goes on top of the roll cage. We're going to give you some 3-inch long bolts here. They go with a washer on the bottom, through the roll cage, through the bracket, and then a washer and a flange nut on top. It's a little tight, but there should be plenty of room to get everything going. Just loosely put that flange nut on right now. And the same thing in the back hole. Okay, leave everything loose for now. We'll go back up on top. All right, now we are going to place these spacers here through the roof, but first I'm going to lay a bead of RTV kind of around the holes so the spacers push through it, just as a precautionary bead of RTV. First here, I'm just using ultra black gasket maker here, it lasts a long time. So go ahead and slide your spacers through the top portion of the roof, through the bottom portion of the roof, and then on top of the brackets that we installed earlier. And then once you get that done, this one's a little tight yet, it should go. Once you get that done, go ahead and take your RTV again and put a bead around the spacer. So around the spacer and against the top here. You can put a pretty large bead here. You could also use like a rubber washer here, but I really like the RTV. I think it seals way better. So, and then we're going to put some on top of this, so when the bracket goes on top of it, it keeps water out as well. So we got a nice bead of RTV on there. We're going to take this bracket. We are going to center it on top of those spacers like that, pressing down on that RTV. We're going to give you some 2 3/4 inch bolts. I'm going to grab, yep, you guessed it, a little more RTV on the top of this bracket, just so the washer presses against it. We just don't want any leaking here, so we're using a lot more than we need, but I'd rather do that. So take the bolt with the washer, press it through the bracket, down through the bracket inside. Same thing for the other one. Through the bracket, through the spacer, through the bracket inside. We can take our washer and nut for those and put them in our pocket. And then we're going to grab our T-handle again and push our mounting bolts through. Grab our flange nuts that we removed earlier and set those on there. So we're just going to want to snug these bolts now, these button head bolts. Get my hand out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. Just going to want to snug these now. Then we're going to want to go inside, add our washers and our nuts on the bottom here, and then we're going to tighten these bolts first, tighten everything down. Then we're going to want to tighten that bracket to our roll cage, those other bolts as well. We're going to do that with 9/16 ender inches. And then we're going to come back and tighten these button head bolts. So I'm going to jump inside or open the door and kind of Okay, so now after you tighten the bolts that come through the roof, you're going to want to tighten these bolts for the brackets themselves. You don't have to go crazy with these. Snug is good. And then wipe off any RTV you have in here, and then we'll go and tighten the rack mount bolt. Once all those are tight, we can grab that 5/30 seconds again and we can tighten these button heads on our mount bolt to the bracket. And the mid mount should be all set. Same process in the rear. I'll show you how that goes on the inside. Same process in the rear. Go ahead and take your RTV and put a nice bead around the hole first. And take our spacers and slide them in, either against the rack inside or against the bracket inside, or so that like a 1/4 inch or so is sticking through. All right, once you're on top of the bracket, go ahead and do like you did before and add a nice big bead of RTV around these spacers so that it will seal against the roof and the spacer itself. And then add a little bit on top here of the spacer itself. And then we can add our bracket on top. Like that. RTV on top of the bracket where the washer is going to go, just so we get a totally weather-tight seal. And then we will take the same 2 3/4 bolts and we will slide them through this bracket and then through the inside bracket on each one of these, and then we'll go inside and we'll add a washer and nut on the inside, and then we can tighten everything down. So on the rears, we're going to want to tighten these bottom bolts first, the hardtop bolts. Then we'll tighten these bolts, then we will tighten the rack bolts themselves. All right, so now we are going to tighten down these right here with a 9/16 end wrench, holding on to the flange nuts on the inside. You can either use a helper for this, or you can kind of stand on the tire and contort in like I'm doing here. And then we can tighten these mount button heads by pushing them through. Adding our flange nut back on. Once all those are snugged up, you can go ahead and repeat that process on the opposite side, and everything should be tightened down and ready to go. And then if you remove that middle bar or remove this bar, go ahead and reinstall those. Then you're probably going to want to vacuum up all of this fiberglass dust that's covering you, your Jeep, your interior, your garage. It's crazy how that stuff gets everywhere. All right, once you have that mount tightened up, you can repeat the process on the other side. You can grab a rag and wipe off any big gobs of RTV. You can grab a vacuum and vacuum up all this fiberglass dust that's getting all over you, your Jeep, your interior, probably your garage, but you're all set. Make sure all your bolts are tight, reinstall any of these bars that you removed, and you're ready to load this bad boy up. If you have any questions about this product or any product here at JCR Off-Road, give us a call, 269-353-1184, or email us at info@jcroffroad.com. Thank you so much for becoming part of the JCR Off-Road family. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.